you ever felt trapped by what others think of you? Do you find yourself constantly seeking approval, changing who you are just to fit in? If you're watching this, chances are you've experienced that suffocating feeling of living for others' opinions. Today, I'm going to share something that might completely transform how you see yourself and your relationships. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover could be the key to the freedom you've been searching for. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and genuinely not caring whether people like you or not. Not in a rude or antisocial way, but with a deep, peaceful confidence that allows you to be completely yourself. Sounds impossible? Well, according to Japanese philosopher Ichiro Kishimi and his colleague Fumitaka Koga, this is not only possible, it's the secret to true happiness. Their revolutionary ideas challenge everything we've been taught about pleasing others and fitting in. They argue that there's one simple reason why you're unhappy. You care too much about what others think. And here's the shocking part. They believe this is a choice you're making, not something that's happening to you. Now, I know what you're thinking, but I can't help caring what people think. It's natural. And you're right. It does feel natural. From childhood, we're rewarded for being good, for making our parents proud, for getting our teachers' approval. We learn that love and acceptance come from meeting others' expectations. But what if I told you this is exactly what's making you miserable? The great psychologist Alfred Adler, whose work inspired Kishimi and Koga, had a radical view of human nature. Unlike Freud, who believed we're driven by past traumas, Adler saw us as goal-oriented beings. Everything we do, think, and feel, yes, even our emotions, serves a purpose we've chosen, whether we realize it or not. Think about that person who's always anxious before job interviews. They say, "If only I wasn't so nervous, I could get the job." But Adler would say they're creating that anxiety because their real goal isn't to get the job. It's to avoid the possibility of rejection. The fear protects them from having to face potential failure. This might sound harsh, but it's actually liberating. If we're creating our emotions to serve our goals, then we can choose different goals and create different emotions. We're not victims of our feelings. We're their authors. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But here's the problem. Most of us never discover who we truly are because we're too busy trying to be who others want us to be. We wear masks, play roles, and perform for an audience that honestly isn't even paying that much attention. The pursuit of approval is like chasing a mirage in the desert. The closer you think you're getting, the further away it seems. Why? Because approval is always conditional and always temporary. Today they like you for being funny. Tomorrow they might find you annoying. Today they admire your success. Tomorrow they might resent it. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this centuries ago when he wrote about the fickle nature of public opinion. He observed that trying to please everyone is a fool's errand because people's desires and expectations are constantly changing and often contradictory. What pleases one person offends another. What seems noble to some appears weak to others. But it gets worse. When you live for others' approval, you're not just chasing something elusive. You're actively destroying your own freedom. Every time you change yourself to fit someone else's expectations, you're giving away a piece of your authentic self. You're saying, "Who I really am isn't good enough." And here's where it gets really interesting. Kishimi and Koga argue that unhappy people don't just seek approval. They actually see life as a competition. If someone else succeeds, they feel like they've failed. If someone else is praised, they feel diminished. This competitive mindset turns everyone into a potential threat, making genuine connection impossible. Think about social media for a moment. How often do you scroll through posts feeling inadequate because everyone else seems to be living their best life? That's the approval trap in action. You're comparing your inside to everyone else's carefully curated outside, and of course, you come up short. The psychologist Erik Erikson talked about the importance of developing a strong sense of identity. But how can you develop an identity when you're constantly morphing to meet others' expectations? You become what I call a social chameleon, changing colors to blend in wherever you go, but never knowing your true colors. Now, you might be wondering, if I stop caring what others think, won't I become selfish or antisocial? This is where Kishimi and Koga's philosophy gets really beautiful. They argue that truly happy people don't stop caring about others. They stop needing others' approval. There's a huge difference. Happy people, according to their philosophy, focus on contribution rather than approval. They ask, how can I be useful? Instead of, how can I be liked? This shift changes everything. When you're focused on contributing, you're adding value to the world. When you're focused on approval, you're just performing. The psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps, discovered something profound about human nature. He found that those who survived weren't necessarily the strongest or the smartest, but those who found meaning in helping others. Even in the darkest circumstances, the ability to contribute gave people a reason to live. This aligns perfectly with what Kishimi and Koga teach. When you know you're being useful, you don't need constant validation. Your sense of worth comes from within, from knowing you're making a difference, however small. But here's the radical part. They argue that you don't even need to do anything special to be valuable. Just by existing, you bring something unique to the world. Your presence matters to someone, even if you don't realize it. This isn't feel-good fluff. It's based on the understanding that humans are inherently social beings who affect each other simply by being. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard wrote about the anxiety of freedom. When you stop living for others' approval, you suddenly face the terrifying responsibility of choosing your own path. There's no one to blame if things go wrong, no excuses about meeting others' expectations, just you and your choices. This is why Kishimi and Koga talk about courage. It takes tremendous courage to be disliked, to stand by your values when others disapprove, to be authentic when it might cost you relationships or opportunities. But this courage is the price of freedom. Think about the people you most admire. Chances are, they're not the ones who tried to please everyone. They're the ones who stood for something, who were willing to be misunderstood or criticized for their beliefs. From Gandhi to Martin Luther King Jr., from Rosa Parks to Malala Yousafzai. History celebrates those who had the courage to be disliked. But you don't need to change the world to benefit from this philosophy. It applies to everyday life. The courage to say no to commitments that don't align with your values. The courage to pursue a career that matters to you, even if others think it's impractical. The courage to be vulnerable in relationships instead of wearing a mask. The psychologist Brené Brown talks about the power of vulnerability, how showing up as your true self, imperfections and all, creates deeper connections than any performance ever could. This is exactly what Kishimi and Koga are advocating. The courage to be imperfect, to be real, to be disliked by some so you can be truly loved by others. Now, I want to address something important. If you've experienced trauma or struggle with mental health issues, this philosophy isn't about dismissing your pain or telling you to just choose happiness. It's about recognizing that regardless of what's happened to you, you still have some agency in how you respond, in the meaning you create from your experiences. The psychologist Carl Rogers developed the concept of unconditional positive regard. The idea that we all need to be accepted for who we are, not who we pretend to be. But here's the catch. We can't receive this from others until we first give it to ourselves. We can't expect others to accept our authentic self if we're hiding it behind a mask of approval seeking. So how do you actually develop this courage to be disliked? It starts with small steps. Notice when you're about to say or do something just to gain approval. Pause and ask yourself, what would I do if I knew no one was watching? Then do that instead. Pay attention to how often you apologize for things that don't require an apology. How often you say yes when you want to say no. How often you dim your light to make others more comfortable. These are all signs of living for approval rather than authenticity. Start practicing what I call disappointing people on purpose. Not in a mean way, but by simply being honest about your preferences, boundaries, and values. Say no to that party you don't want to attend. Express your real opinion in a conversation. Wear what makes you feel good, not what others expect. You'll notice something interesting. The world doesn't end when people disapprove. In fact, you might find that the people who matter most respect you more for being authentic, and those who can't handle your authenticity, well, maybe they weren't meant to be in your life anyway. The author Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act just once with beauty and courage." The dragon of others' disapproval might be the very thing that, once faced, transforms into the princess of authentic self-expression. Remember, seeking approval is like being in a prison where you're both the prisoner and the guard. You've locked yourself in, and you're the only one who can set yourself free. The key is realizing that the approval you're seeking from others is really the approval you're withholding from yourself. As we wrap up, I want you to imagine your life 5 years from now. In one scenario, you've continued living for others' approval, shape-shifting to meet their expectations, never quite feeling good enough. In another scenario, you've developed the courage to be yourself, to contribute in your unique way, to be disliked by some but deeply connected to others who value the real you. Which life do you want? The choice is yours, and you can start making it today. If this message resonated with you, I encourage you to take one small step today toward living more authentically. Maybe it's saying no to something you don't want to do. Maybe it's expressing an opinion you've been holding back. Maybe it's simply sitting with the discomfort of knowing someone, somewhere, doesn't approve of you, and being okay with that. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, someone who's struggling under the weight of others' expectations. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is permission to be themselves. Remember, the courage to be disliked isn't about becoming antisocial or uncaring. It's about freeing yourself from the impossible task of pleasing everyone so you can focus on what really matters, contributing to the world in your unique way, forming genuine connections, and living a life that's true to who you really are. The journey to authentic happiness begins with one simple but profound shift, caring more about being useful than being liked. Are you ready to make that shift? Your future self is waiting.